Hey everybody, or I can say, hey Yang Gang, and CRL listeners and other refugees dragged here by the algorithm. Welcome, travelers, friends. Today I was going to talk about Andrew Yang's platform of human-centered capitalism, but then the El Paso thing was headline news, and I thought I'd jump to the gun safety portion of Andrew Yang's 2020 campaign platform plank. Gun safety. Notice he doesn't say gun control or gun confiscation or banning guns or anything like that. There is a reliable faction on the left who, after every mass shooting, will make some pronouncement like, it's about time, we can't tolerate this anymore, we have to ban guns. That's never, ever going to happen. That is not a workable idea, and Andrew Yang understands that. So, from the gun safety portion of his website. For many Americans, guns are a big part of their culture and identity. That is a great opening sentence. It acknowledges that, demanding that the portion of the country which values firearm ownership, demanding that they be disarmed, is not only politically naive, but it's openly antagonistic to people who are not criminals, who are not the perpetrators of gun violence. These are the people who own and have owned, and it's just a part of their family history, their own identity, how they see themselves in the world, a responsible, mature person who takes care of their family and their home, protects it. They have weapons. Andrew Yang continues, however, guns are a major responsibility, and thus we need to have common sense gun safety measures, especially considering that there are already approximately 300 million firearms in the United States. Responsible gun owners should continue to enjoy the right to bear arms, subject to licensing and education requirements that will encourage the public safety. So, definitely a departure from, the more strident anti-gun Democrats. Now the blue section. Most Americans agree on common sense safety requirements and restrictions on firearms. As president, I will support sensible regulation of guns that allows their continued enjoyment by responsible gun owners in a framework that promotes the overall public safety. So he's stressing, the point here is not to defeat one side. It is not to humiliate one side in the cultural battle, the cultural contest. The point here is safety. And it is, at the ground level, part of our plan to ensure that the people who value gun ownership, provided they are responsible and, law-abiding people, that they continue to enjoy that fundamental right. It is identified in this culture, in this country, as a right. Problems to be solved. Most Americans agree that responsible gun ownership, with some restrictions, is the proper policy. And current gun laws have been pushed in a dangerous direction by lobbying groups, not mentioning any names, only looking out for the profits of gun manufacturers. I'll hunt up a photograph of the NRA's corporate headquarters, or their Washington, D.C., maybe it's their lobbying headquarters, I don't know. They've got a big monument of a building in Washington, D.C. that was definitely not paid for by NRA members paying their annual dues to the organization. This organization is heavily funded by gun manufacturers, and that is who they represent. That's not from Andrew Yang's website, that's just me talking. Goals. Create a common sense licensing policy requiring investment and safety precautions. Prevent dangerous individuals from owning guns. Encourage innovation in firearm personalization and safety. Enhance mental health resources available to people who need help. Now, he's going to mention mental health repeatedly in this, and whenever there is a mass shooting, the ban guns faction on the Democratic side makes a lot of noise, and then the corresponding or the answer to that from the right is, we have to focus on mental health. We have to make sure that people who are in mental health crisis have options. They have somewhere to turn. They have resources. They have people who are knowledgeable and able to help them, which is obviously true, but it's kind of gross that the only time we ever hear about it is in the aftermath of a mass shooting. So, as president, I will. This is long, and I'm not going to read it all. Basically, he proposes a 3-tiered system of gun ownership. Of course, the easiest, Tier 1, you don't really have to do much to qualify for it. And in fact, everybody who currently has a firearm already qualifies. They're going to get grandfathered in. You're not going to have to go out and take a test the day that Andrew Yang is elected president so that you can keep your gun. You are automatically qualified for Tier 1 gun ownership. But then as weapons become more powerful and more combat-oriented and more dangerous in terms of their being used in a public shooting, then the safety requirements, the licensing requirements are increased. So that's part of it. But, that's only going to apply to people who obey laws, the people who are committing gun crimes. Now, the ones who go crazy, they may well have been law-abiding, peaceful people who maintain their guns and keep them in gun safes until they went off the edge. I don't know if that's true or in how many cases it's true, but it seems plausible. But he writes, anyone with a history of violence, domestic abuse, or violent mental illness would be restricted from receiving a license. Forever? For how long? I mean, if you're accused of violence, or if you're accused of domestic abuse, or if you were diagnosed with a mental illness at one point in your life, are you then forever defined by that conviction or by that diagnosis? Or is there some path to rehabilitation, rejoining society, and regaining your rights as an adult? That's a question I have for the Andrew Yang campaign. I'm certainly not going to gun safety, gun ownership is not my issue. I mean, I was attracted to Andrew Yang because he was speaking intelligently on the topics of artificial intelligence and automation and its effects on the economy. That's my issue. So I'm certainly not going to withdraw my support for Andrew Yang based on anything I find on this page, unless it's absurd. And he demonstrated from the very first sentence that he is not an extremist on this issue. He's taking a very common sense, practical, results-oriented tack on this issue, and I respect that. So I'm going to skip a lot of these and get down to where he talks about encourage gun manufacturers to implement designs that prevent interchanging parts that alter the functionality of the firearm. That seems rather specific. And I have to say, as much as it leaps off the page at me as something to pay attention to, I don't really know what he's talking about here. So if you're interested, let me know. I'll research it and do a separate video on just that topic. Invest in innovative technology that would make firearms harder to fire for non-owners of the gun, and create a federal bipartisan panel to determine when technological innovations are advanced and reliable enough to be included in manufacturing safety requirements. A couple different things going on there. He's talking about high-tech guns that either recognize maybe your fingerprint, your palm print, possibly your DNA. I mean, something that a gun is on the table, you can pick it up and fire it, nobody else in the room can. If you lose control of your weapon, it will not be used against you. Somebody stealing the weapon from you is basically stealing a doorstop. That is high-tech, kind of sounds like science fiction right now. So I like what he said about how there's going to be a bipartisan congressional panel to evaluate these new safety technologies to determine when they are sufficiently advanced and reliable that we can do like we do with auto manufacturers and say, okay, this is just a safety feature that you have to include in your product now, period. It would be unworkable to make that demand of arms manufacturers before the technology was mature. So part of his plan is to watch gun safety technology to determine when it is mature and when the government can tell manufacturers you must include this safety feature in your product. And then he ends with he talks about suicide prevention lifelines and basically making sure that veterans have the mental health services that they need, because suicide rates in the veteran population is much higher than it is out in the general population in society. And finally, initiate and fund mindfulness programs in schools and correctional facilities, which have been demonstrated to reduce violent behavior. and invest heavily in law enforcement training to de-escalate situations involving firearms. That doesn't even need to be, in gun safety. That needs to be in police reform. Police are trained to use violence against citizens. They are trained they have a lot of training in how to kill people with weapons, and inadequate training in how to de-escalate situations which could easily turn violent and make sure that they don't. If the job of the police is to protect the citizenry, then the citizenry needs to be protected from the police. Policing is considered a dangerous job, but do a little research. Do civilians kill more police, or do police kill more civilians? Is it more dangerous to be a policeman, or is it more dangerous to be the person that the policeman has pulled over? Don't answer that according to your pre-existing belief system. Research it. Find out. All right, and now, at the risk of letting this video run kind of long, I want to share something that's not explicitly related to this topic, but it did come into my inbox this morning as a result of this massacre in El Paso. This is from Shelley Palmer. He's somebody I follow because he also writes about artificial intelligence and its effect on the economy. So he sent out a mailing this morning, and at first, he talks about, you got to get outraged about the gun violence, blah, blah, blah. But then he moves into a topic which is of more interest to me. And this is the topic of companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon. They know us very well. They can tell what kind of music we like, what we'll probably want to watch on TV, what kind of car we would consider driving. And as these companies gather more and more information about us, it is quite likely that their algorithms will be able to determine which of us is at a very high risk of going postal. Which of us is reaching our breaking point. And at that point, the question is, what obligation do these companies have? If they have good reason to believe that you are very close to a psychotic break and you have weapons in the house and you're about to go on a killing spree, they should probably tell the police, right? But suppose you are just as agitated for the same reasons, but you don't have guns, but you're definitely in need of help. Is it Google's responsibility to make sure you get that help? Right now, clearly the answer is no, absolutely not. Positively zero responsibility on Google's part to look after your mental health. But if these devices and the algorithms which collate the data that the devices collect are always watching us, always building profiles on us for the enrichment of corporations, could that technology be turned to providing for public safety and for individual benefit, welfare? Obviously, the answer to that question is yes, it could be. Will it be? Do we have any case for compelling these companies to behave in a particular way if it's not profitable to them? Do we have the moral authority, the legal authority to compel a company like Facebook or Google or Amazon to do something that is above and beyond their corporate mission, to serve their shareholders and to serve their customers? All right, well, the dog is telling me that there's not space in this video to tackle that topic, but I do want to read just this one paragraph from Shelley Palmer. He writes, "To an algorithm, the scoring of your propensity to purchase a particular pair of shoes is not very different from the scoring of your propensity to become a mass murderer. The main difference is the data set being scored. As always, your thoughts and comments are both welcome and strongly encouraged." So, for the algorithms, it would be no more difficult to determine which of us are about to go on killing sprees than it is to figure out which of us are in the market for a new car or a new pair of shoes. But at present, the companies have no motivation whatsoever to get involved at that level. Should we, as a society, compel them to do so? Let me know what you think, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Stay well.